It's time for another Gen X story time. This one, Gen X childhood was basically a lesson in how not to raise children, if you think about it in today's terms. If you survived it, congratulations. You are now legally classified as weird but resilient.
First of all, I'm Gen X, so watch it.
There was a time when kids could disappear for 10 hours. And the only rule was be home before the streetlights came on. That was parenting in the late 70s, early 80s. That was the entire system. Gen X grew up in a world where seatbelts were optional, supervision was rare, and adults just assumed we'd figure things out, or at least survive trying. And when you look back at all the stuff that we were allowed to do, it's honestly shocking. Riding in the back of pickup trucks, walking miles across town for no good reason, talking to random adults who probably we shouldn't have been near. So today I want to talk about the wild stuff that Gen X kids were allowed to do and why it somehow turned us into the very strange but very tough adults we are today.
I'm a latchkey kid.
First off, the transportation situation. Gen X kids rode everywhere on our bikes or in the back of pickup trucks. Not sitting politely. No, we were bouncing around like a bag of rubber balls. You're holding on to the side of the truck for dear life while somebody's dad will yell out the window, "Y'all kids okay back there?" And you always said yes, because if you said no, the truck wasn't going to stop. Seatbelts existed, technically. They were more for decoration than anything else. Then there was all the walking. Kids today have location trackers, phones, and parents who know where they are every second of every day. Gen X kids got kicked out of the house after breakfast, and you weren't allowed back inside until the streetlights came on. I used to walk 3 miles downtown in my little hometown by myself. Sometimes the destination would just be a weird little store, or sometimes it would be to talk to some winos who were sitting on a bench outside the police department. Just happy to talk about life for an hour or so. Did our parents know this? Absolutely not. And honestly, I'm not sure they'd want to know. Then there was the bike situation. If you owned a bike in the 70s or 80s, that bike was your passport to another dimension. Nobody wore helmets. The only safety equipment we had was a banana seat and a sissy bar. So we fell down a lot. Another classic Gen X activity was just wandering around the mall for hours. You didn't have any money to spend, but all your friends were there. You'd go into every store, touch everything, try on sunglasses, look at posters. Eventually, you'd scrape up the money to buy one Dr. Pepper and share it amongst all 4 of you. But nobody chased you out because you didn't act up because some random adult would yell at you. That was allowed back then. Nowadays, if you yell at somebody's kids, the parents get all up in your face. That wasn't like that back then. It was literally the saying, it takes a village to raise a child, and everybody kicked in. But the best place that Gen X kids spent time was in their bedrooms, because that's where the music was. Hours and hours of music. You'd put on a record and somehow you weren't just listening to it. You were performing it on your own little stage. 1 minute you were dramatically lip syncing to some sad 50s pop song like you were in an old black and white movie about juvenile delinquents. Then the next minute, Casey and the Sunshine Band comes on and you're discoing all around your bed.
Casey and the Sunshine Band is playing.
And then the next record would be ELO. You're dancing along with that, pretending to conduct the orchestra. And then around 1978, things took a turn. punk happened. So then you'd be stomping around the room pretending you were Johnny Rotten.
Gosh, do I look like Johnny Rotten or...
After that, it would be Devo would come on, and you'd be dancing the robot like you were in some weird futuristic movie. The neighbors probably thought I was summoning demons, but that was normal. Gen X kids basically put on imaginary concerts in their bedrooms. Now here's the part that sounds insane today. There were no adults around. Gen X was the generation of latchkey kids. By the late 70s and early 80s, millions of kids came home to empty houses. We had our house key on a shoelace around our neck, and one or both parents would be working. At one point, I think there was like 1 in 3 kids were basically managing their afternoons completely alone. You got home from school at 3:30, unlocked the door, turned on the TV to watch the Banana Splits or cartoons, Three Stooges. You made a sandwich, usually peanut butter and jelly, and waited for your parents to come home about 3 hours later. There wasn't any texting. There wasn't any internet. They weren't checking in on you. It was just a pure, unsupervised existence, which meant we had a lot of freedom. But freedom can come with chaos, because when kids have freedom and boredom, they start inventing activities that they probably shouldn't, like building bike ramps out of a sheet of plywood and some cinder blocks, or setting off firecrackers when it wasn't July 4th or New Year's Eve, or knocking on your friend's door at 9 p.m. on a Friday night and saying, let's go exploring. Explore what, you ask? Nobody knew. Maybe a creek out behind the elementary school that had a drainage ditch that kids usually hung around in. Or you'd go into a housing development where there was new construction and just go climb in through a window and sit in a brand new house that nobody had lived in and pretend like it was your house. Maybe an abandoned building. Or maybe just hang out in the woods. And again, nobody knew where you were. You were just out there. But here's the funny thing. Even though it sounds reckless now, those years taught Gen X kids something that most people don't talk about. We learned how to solve problems. If your bike chain fell off, there wasn't an adult around to fix it for you, so you had to figure it out yourself. If you got lost, you just wandered around till you saw something recognizable and found your own way home. If something went wrong, there was no adult around to immediately step in to fix it. And I think that's why Gen X adults have this strange combination of traits. We can survive almost anything because we have. We know how to entertain ourselves. We can sit alone with music for hours and be perfectly happy. We're not afraid to talk to strangers. We can figure stuff out because we had to. Our childhood was basically a training course in independence. Accidental independence. The adults were busy, either working, running errands, or hanging out with their own friends. So the kids just ran our own world for a while. When people look back at Gen X childhoods now, they usually focus on how dangerous it was. And yeah, some of it really was dangerous. Riding in pickup trucks, wandering miles from home, talking to random adults you didn't know. Not exactly a modern parenting handbook, but it also gave us something pretty rare. Space. Space to explore. Space to be bored, and then figure out how not to be bored. Space to build weird imaginary worlds while blasting records in our bedrooms. And that freedom shaped us. Gen X may be a little strange, maybe more than a little strange, but we're also incredibly resilient, because when you grow up unsupervised, you learn how to survive. If you're ever in a real fix or need advice, on a life situation, a Gen X person is the one you want to ask, because we've been through it all and we can help you out. And young people shouldn't be afraid of us. We've got a lot to tell them, and I think they could benefit from our knowledge. If you're a Gen Xer, what weird things did you get away with when you were a kid? Tell us about it in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. If you like my content, drop a like and maybe think of subscribing. It helps my channel a lot and I really appreciate it. And I will see you in the next one. Where's that KC and the Sunshine Band album?